Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/spookshow. Then go over to morbidlybeautiful.com as we are now part of the Morbidly Beautiful Podcasting Network.
Attention all campers.
The All-American Spook Show welcomes you to enroll in Camp Spook Show this summer. We have activities for all ages, including archery, canoeing, swimming, and
Running for your lives.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the All-American Spook Show podcast. I'm Josh and I'm joined here with Will,
Hey.
Donnie,
Hey.
and the Professor Smoke. We are here to start Camp Spook Show. We've been talking about it for like the last month or so on Deadline Horror News and all the various other things that we send out. But we're finally here. And we begin with Will's choice. And, in the rotation, he had to pick a newer one. So what have you brought to us today, Will?
I'm ashamed to say I brought You Might Be the Killer.
Well, we'll get into that, I'm sure, but this is a first-time watch for all of us, right? I believe none of us had seen this before.
Correct. Not for me.
Yeah. This came out in 2018, and honestly, I don't even know if I'd even heard of it, but I think it was like something, we'll get into the ins and outs of when it was released, but I do believe it might have actually debuted on television, although I couldn't find exactly where.
Isn't this a sci-fi movie? So
as we speak and as the recording of this podcast, you can watch it via Sci-Fi, and it may have been, but I'm not sure if it was something that originally debuted on Sci-Fi or not, because it did play on Shudder. But either way, I guess before we get into it, if you want to reach us at all the normal places, you can contact us by email. By allamericanspookshow@gmail.com. You can go to the Linktree link down in the show notes there. That will let you go anywhere you want to go as far as all of our socials and all the other ways to get our podcasts and everything. But we also are over on the Slasher app. We have a YouTube page, of course. Every Wednesday we have Deadline Horror News live at 9 p.m. East with the occasional special that we throw out there if we're not able to do the live stream. We've done that a few times here lately, but just letting you know, even if it's that, every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. there's something new going on over on our YouTube channel. Of course, we have a TeePublic page where we have logoed merchandise. And of course, we want to direct you over to our Patreon page. It's patreon.com/AASpookshow. We encourage you to become a patron. You get early access to episodes, all at various levels. I mean, we have literally a level, like at $1. But, the $3 levels and $5 levels on up are the ones where, you get more bonus content, specifically at the $5 level, because that's where you get the early access to podcasts. You get bonus videos, or I should say bonus podcasts every month, including like Spook Show Rewinds, Crapster Piece Theaters, which we just recently did No Holds Barred. So that's over there right now. If you want to hear us wax poetic on Hulk Hogan's classic No Holds Barred, Patreon is the place to be. So,
if you smell the Spook Show is cooking.
Yeah, and we'll have a new bowl of shit stew this month. So, and that will be Camp Spook Show related, because everything from this point forward for the next, say, give or take 2 months, maybe a little over 2 months, will all be summer camp related, regardless of whether it's Cult Corner, Crapster Piece Theater, Cannon Fodder, Spook Show Spotlights, everything that we do, it will all be summer camp related. So that's the whole gimmick behind Camp Spook Show, and this is where we decided to begin, or I should say, this is where Will decided that we begin, is You Might Be the Killer from 2018. So before we dig into it, I'll go ahead and toss her the trailer.
Rings of Saturn.
Chalk!
Sam?
I'm really scared. Maybe you could help me out?
Being responsible for an entire summer camp?
Nature's our nature.
What could possibly go wrong?
Everything started out so great, and now there's this crazed killer roaming the campground.
Wait, really?
Everyone is dead.
I mean, that sometimes happens.
Especially the camp counselors.
Like, is it an old camper back for blood?
How do you know that? How does knowing who it is help me not die?
Figuring out what they want could help you not die.
Smart.
Sam? I hate to ask you this, but are you sure you're not the killer?
All right, so there you go. That's the trailer for that. So I guess we'll, before we, get into the little bit of plot synopsis and the little roundtable discussion, I'll throw out some of the background information that I found on it. Did you know that this movie actually had another alternate title? Every once in a while, we find a decent, halfway decent alternate title to these movies. But this one that I found had an alternate title of Scary Camp. Apparently, that was the French title. They just called it Scary Camp, but. Which I guess, it's an apt description, right? And here you go, scary. It's at a summer camp. But it debuted September 21st, 2018 at Fantastic Fest. Sometime after that, I believe it was in the month of October of 2018, it made its television premiere, but I couldn't find exactly where, like I said earlier. So, it was around that time period. But then by December of 2018, December 6th to be exact, it debuted on Shudder. I'm not sure how long it was there, but it's currently, as we're recording that, it's not there anymore. About the only way you could watch this now is like a video on demand, renting it or buying it. And I believe it was available on Sci-Fi, right? On Sci-Fi's website, if you have a way to access, Sci-Fi. I guess if you have like a cable subscription or something like that, you can watch it. But otherwise, there were a couple hoops you had to jump through, because it's no longer on Shudder. But on February 5th, 2019, so about 2 months after it was on Shudder, it did release on DVD and Blu-ray. It was produced by Curmudgeon Films, Vital Signs Entertainment, and distributed by Screen Media Ventures. This film is not rated because, I guess, since it never got a theatrical release, it was not rated. Total runtime is 1 hour and 32 minutes. Over on IMDb, it's listed as a comedy/horror/mystery. Best I could find, it was done for a budget of about $1.3 million. And it was filmed at least started filming May of 2018. So it's a pretty quick turnaround, really. I mean, starts filming around May of 2018, and then it's made its debut September 21st at Fantastic Fest that same year. So, although I'm sure there's not a massive amount of, post-production in a movie like this. It's just, people running around at a summer camp dying. So, probably the credits and shit took them longer to do than, in post than any of the shit that they did on screen. The camp scenes were filmed at Camp Bonton in Breaux Bridge, Louisiana. The store scenes, where Chuck, his friend Chuck in the film was, that was filmed at a comic book and hobby store in Lafayette, Louisiana called ... and Books Too. That was the name of the store. Although they changed it for whatever the hell they had changed it to. Something. What was it? I'm blanking.
Rings of Saturn.
Yeah, Rings of Saturn. Yeah. So for whatever reason, I don't know why they wouldn't just keep the real name of the store, but I guess they wanted to get clever, right? The concept of the movie originated from two writers going back and forth in a Twitter thread. Sam Sykes, who was an author, and Chunk Wendig, who is an author. He most famously wrote the Star Wars Aftermath trilogy, and he's wrote a bunch of comics and stuff too. So I'd actually heard of this guy. Will, I think you read those Star Wars Aftermath books, right? Or listened to them?
Yeah, I read all three of those. Yeah, they were pretty good. I liked them.
So basically, the original concept of it originated there, and then it ended up being, formulated into this movie that we watched by Thomas B. Vital, who would best be known as the producer of Animal, Rise of the Zombies, and a shit ton of sci-fi movies. Also written by Brett Simmons and Clovis Berzon. They didn't really have too many other credits. So Vitale pretty much was the one that, I'm assuming took the lead on writing this. The movie stars Fran Kranz as Sam. He would best be known as, or from The Cabin in the Woods, that horrible Stephen King adaptation of The Dark Tower, and The Village, among many other things. He's actually has a directing credit as well. It stars roughly, I guess you could arguably say this is the biggest star of the movie, really. Allison Hannigan as Chuck. This is Sam's best friend that works at the comic book shop. She would best be known from her time on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, back from the late 90s, early 2000s. Of course, the American Pie movies, the first 2 or 3. How many ever those they made with that core cast from the first one? And, of course, she had a good run in that CBS sitcom, How I Met Your Mother. So, like I said, arguably the biggest star from this movie. Brittany S. Hall as Amani. She would best be known from that HBO show with The Rock called Ballers. Jenna Harvey as Jamie. She was in an episode... this is literally only her... She has 3 credits to her name. She was in an episode of the show called The First, and then a movie called Voices. So that's it. And this, of course. So I'm sure, maybe eventually you'll see her in more and more things. But as of right now, this is pretty much it. And then randomly, Keith David is Sheriff James in this movie, but you only hear his voice.
Yeah.
Which is weird that you would get someone with the horror and cult movie, background as Keith David, and then only just put him in as a random voice towards the end of the movie, right? Because I think that's the only time you hear it, or was there another time in the movie where you heard it and I just forgot about it? Anybody remember?
I think that's it. Just right at the very end, you just hear his voice, because whenever they mention, talking to the sheriff, you never hear his voice previously.
Yeah. So it's just random that they would get him to do it and not be on screen, right? At least for a minute. But he is.
I think the joke was.
I'm sorry.
Through the previous part of the movie, you had to leave a message every time.
Yeah.
So he finally called back, and then that was at the end of the movie. Okay, but still, Keith David to do this, like, it could have been any random Joe. Like, I guess it's a nice nod to have a guy like this in it, but still, like, you would think if you got him to be in it, to agree to be in it, let's at least put him on screen for a minute, because then at least you can, if you're selling some DVD or Blu-ray, you can slap his face on it. Like, oh, Keith David's in this. Okay, I might give it a shot. Otherwise. But I guess they were leaning on Allison Hannigan to sell it, as opposed to him. So, because let's face it, if you see, the poster's not a horrible poster, the one that I saw. But if you see it, like, obviously, oh yes, that chick from American Pie, or whatever or Buffy or whatever, that's where your eyes are going to go to probably. Not that other dude, the main guy, Fran Kranz.
Yeah.
But anyways, Keith David would best be known from John Carpenter classics such as They Live, The Thing. He was in that Spawn animated series that came on HBO, I think, like in the late 90s. He was one of the voices in that. So tons and tons and tons. I don't have it pulled up in front of me, but I think the dude had like 200, 300 something credits, acting credits on IMDb. So lots of things. So if it weren't for the fact that, he didn't have a role on screen, I'd say he was the biggest star in this movie. But can you really count it, if he's just a voice on the fucking phone, but whatever. Was there any other thing you guys wanted to point out before we take our deep dive into it here?
The only thing I found was Allison Hannigan shot her scenes in 2 days, and then she was done.
And I can believe it, just based on the way, like, she literally never left the comic book shop. Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
So I can believe it only took a couple days.
To your point about Keith David, he's got 348 acting credits on IMDb.
Yeah, I knew it was. I remember seeing that it was a shit ton when I pulled that up. But yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's quite a lot.
Yeah,
so
highly recognizable face. If
there was a lot of. Well, I don't know if I can mention it now, but once we get into it, and we talk about the character names, there was a lot of nods to existing horror movies and things.
Yeah, that's there for sure.
Named Nancy, Nightmare on Elm Street, and et cetera, et cetera.
Lee Curtis.
Yeah, Jamie Lee Curtis. Yeah, Jamie. And there was another one that was there was a character named Nancy and a character named Heather. So Heather Langenkamp played Nancy in Nightmare on Elm Street. So there was a lot of little nods like that in
And then there's Nancy and Drew.
Yes, yeah, that's a very obvious one there, right? Nancy and Drew. I don't remember hearing those two names said at the same time in the movie, though. That would definitely be like, what? Wait a minute. I mean, in the same sentence or whatever.
Yeah. Nancy Drew.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
For you, the listeners of the All-American Spook Show podcast, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. So I just went over in the old Audible and typed in Summer Camp Horror just to see what would pop up. And only two things with those three keywords popped up. Camp Red Moon by R.L. Stein, narrated by R.L. Stein and a whole cast. So I guess it's kind of like a little mini play thing. Length is 4 hours and 32 minutes. So, and that's an Audible original. So you can only get it there. And one other one, Camp Murder Face by Saundra Mitchell and Josh Burke, narrated by Tara Sands, Maxwell Glick, and it's the first book of the Camp Murder Face series, apparently. And it's
that sounds like a safe camp. I mean, anybody would send their kids to that camp.
Yeah. And the now it's 7.5 hours long, but the funny thing is the cover of it looks like a kid's book. So I don't know if you want your kids reading a book called Camp Murder Face, but whatever. You know how these kids are today, right? But yeah, if either one of those interests you, you can go over to audibletrial.com/spookshow. Again, that's audibletrial.com/spookshow for your free audiobook. So I'm gonna, the kind of the more recent thing that we've been doing here is just going over to IMDb and searching out plot summaries. Instead of just going, deep into the movies themselves. So I've got two. One's brief, and then another one's got, it's spoiler filled. So before I read this and before we go any further, I will remind you that we are a spoiler filled podcast. So if you have not watched You Might Be the Killer and you would like to, you might want to pause this, go track it down, watch it, and then come back and listen to the rest of this. So fair warning from this point forward because we're going to spoil it. The brief one is, a camp counselor suffering from blackouts finds himself surrounded by murder victims. He turns to his horror movie enthusiast friend for advice and to contend with the idea he may be the killer. That really, that pretty much sums it up, right?
Much, yeah, pretty much sums it up.
There's more details than that, but yeah, that's. So, next week, it's my choice, and now this one's more wordy, but it's got spoilers in it. So here we go. It didn't say who posted this either, so I'm not dead sure of that. I can't credit anyone, but here's what it says. The story takes place in the summer at an empty... God, this is so fucking... Whoever wrote this, their English is their second language. The story takes place in the summer at an empty kids' summer camp with the camp counselors freshly arrived. Sam, the protagonist, is the head summer camp counselor and owner of the summer camp, Camp Clear Vista. Away from the civilization, I don't know why you'd word it that way, with no phones or other distractions, they were fine, trying to relax by telling scary stories to each other and have fun. That night, Sam decided to share the legend for this property about a great evil power and a man that made a wooden mask, which had all that power and made him kill people. It sounds like a 12-year-old wrote this. It all started to go wrong when Amani, one of the camp counselors that happens to be his ex, suggests to all go to a treasure hunt to find that mask. A camp counselor and Sam found that cursed mask buried in the forest in front of that man's grave. Sam doesn't want to do anything. This is so badly worded. Sam doesn't want to do anything with it. He actually tries to warn her, but she plays with it and makes him wear it after all. Suddenly, a mysterious...
Oh, the mask?
Oh, yeah, the mask. Suddenly, a mysterious serial killer starts to brutally murder the camp counselors one by one, and Sam is the one finding the dead bodies. Sam, covered in blood and his last chance to survive, calls his friend Chuck for advice. He suffers from several memory loss... What the fuck? he suffers from memory loss, but soon Chuck made him realize that the facts that he was covered in blood but not hurt, had the mask and an ancient knife, were enough to make him the killer after all. Chuck tells him that this kind of crazy story often ends when the final person that survives is the girl with the pure heart that kills the murderer. Sam then realizes that one is him. What the fuck? And
this is more entertaining than the movie itself.
Yeah,
this is more than a synopsis, though. This is more of a plot.
It's almost over. Sam,
what, the podcast?
Yeah, forever. Sam then realized that one is him and tries to do everything to break the curse. Break, B-R-A-K-E, by the way, the curse, and don't end up dead by the final girl, Jamie. Ugh, that's terrible. That reading that might make you want to go watch the movie. Like, that made no sense, but I guess you get the point. You get the highlights. This is what happens.
It's like, I'm not going to take it.
Yeah. I'm just going to write this shit. I'm just going to shit this out on the website, and I'm not going to write my name in it. So we can't blame anybody for that, but ourselves for reading, or myself, I should say, for reading that. So we are all dumber for having heard it, and may God have mercy on our souls.
That's about
Matter of
true.
fact, we're all stupid.
Yeah.
I can sit here and listen to
I know less about the movie, even though I watched the movie. So yeah, there you go. So there you go. That's you might be the killer. So who wants to start the old round table discussion? What are our questions and comments here? What do we want?
Hold on. I was the one that brought this one up. So let me
Yeah, you're right.
First.
I should go to you. Yeah.
Man, the trailer for this really sold the movie. The trailer is so much better than the movie. I think where a movie like Behind the Mask works, and this doesn't, is that they let you know pretty much from the beginning, all right, this guy's going to make it to the end. Where, in Behind the Mask, you don't know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
I think it does too much to explain itself as it goes along.
I could not agree more. I didn't see the fucking trailer. And sometimes whenever we're watching something that we haven't, or that I haven't watched before, I don't want to see the trailer.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
Like
I try to
go in cold.
I try to avoid that. I'm the same way. Like, if it's something I haven't seen, like, I just want to go in as cold as possible. I don't even do the research, that we do for the shows until after I've watched it. Because I don't want any, any of that shit influencing, the way I view it.
One thing that I could not absolutely stand was, why did you need to fucking explain everything? Why explain everything? I thought it was counterproductive.
I think it's too cute. It's trying to be meta. It's trying to be Scream, right? I mean, let's face it. That's it's trying to be what was the one you just mentioned? Behind the Mask.
Behind the Mask.
It's trying to be that, and it's just too cute. It's too heavy-handed. Obviously, like we said, the concept of this came from a fucking Twitter discussion, a Twitter thread discussion. So like, they're just trying to throw all the tropes at you and explain everything, like you said. So it's too much, though. It's too much. And I guess it begs really, to me, one of the first questions you get out of the way here is, did they reveal their cards too soon in this movie? Because you're pretty early on in the movie, within the first 30 minutes, when they tell you what's going on with this guy, right?
Yeah, you pretty much know.
Yeah. What I guess the question is, do you think they would have been better holding those cards and finding a more clever way to get there towards the end, or did they show their hand too soon?
I think they showed everything too soon, because everything that happens after that is anticlimactic. I mean,
it doesn't mean anything.
I mean, probably like 10 minutes into the movie, you've already seen like half the cast dead from flashbacks, even though you had no like connection with the characters yet.
I guess their feelings were, I guess you were supposed to be like, well, I guess, now that I know this guy's the killer, how does he get out of this? I guess that's the mystery, quote unquote, at that point. How can he survive this? How can he get out of this? How can he stop it? Are the questions left after you know who's doing it?
As Josh mentioned, you said Scream, yes, and Willie mentioned Behind the Mask. another movie that just kind of reminds me of totally not horror, but is Jim Carrey's The Mask.
Yeah, well,
That part. Yeah, I was going to mention that.
Yeah,
I was going to mention that later on because
that hard thing,
even the
much like
the mask looks like the mask. Obviously, not when he puts it on and he's all cartoony, but like
similar.
Yeah, the mask itself. Like, remember before Jim Carrey puts it on, it looks like it looks like that, and then
looks like a piece of wood.
Yeah, and then
the concept. But when he puts the mask on, now he becomes a killer, and he's compelled to do these things by the mask, the same way Jim Carrey was in the mask. So it like kind of reminds me of like some kind of Scream meets Behind the Mask meets the mask.
Do you think
that was one of the notes that I wrote? So it's the Mask as a slasher.
Yeah,
in some ways, basically. Yeah.
And for me, too, meta horror is not my favorite subject. And I may have mentioned this on an actual podcast episode. I don't know. I know we've talked about it before. Even the Scream movies aren't my favorite. Even the first one, But Behind the Mask is where I make that exception. That movie, I love that movie. We all love that movie. We done it on the show, and I don't have the episode number in front of me or anything, but the ultimate meta slasher horror movie, even more so than Scream for me personally.
I don't know what the lineage of, what you would consider like one of the first, but I think as far as mainstream, Scream would be the first that kind of did that, right? That kind of broke the fourth wall, so to speak.
Well, when did he make New Nightmare? Because for me, I guess that would be, Wes Craven's New Nightmare was kind of that,
93, 94?
As himself and whatnot.
Yeah, that definitely came before Scream. That's for sure. So I guess if
it doesn't have all the stuff. To me, that's kind of like, I guess you call that proto-meta horror, like the one that kind of had some ideas of what he probably would take with Scream and use in that movie, and then other people after Scream, that set off the whole landslide of other meta-type horror films, too.
Well, that's as good a place as any, really, to ask this question, because I actually wrote this question down after I watched the movie. I was going to save it until then, but since you bring it up, meta horror, yay or nay? Like, are you for it, against it? I mean, because we've just briefly discussed some of the good examples and bad, maybe bad examples. This one, I don't know, but what do you think? Are you? Will, I guess I'll ask you that first. Are you a fan of it?
Honestly, like, Scream is one of my favorite movies, but I think it's, as far as like suspenseful horror goes. But to be honest, the main reason that is not so much for the movie itself, but that was like, for me, one of the first times I went to a movie theater and it felt like a crowd participation movie. The meta portion of it, I enjoyed, but they've definitely leaned on it way too much since the first one.
Mm-hmm. Especially in that series.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, about the only one I think that I really like is Behind the Mask. And I mean, that movie is, for me, in that genre, is perfect. But just about every time that I've seen it since, it is kind of cringy to watch.
Donnie, what do you say? Meta horror.
Yeah, we'll kind of hit the nail on the head about Scream being crowd participation, in the theater. I mean, it's
basically what I mean is like
when
the
they
general,
do it well.
The general concept of like, this is fake, so we're going to rub it in your face, right? That's kind of what it is. So it's almost like we just did No Holds Barred, so another wrestling reference. Like everybody knows wrestling is scripted. It's a predetermined outcome, but you can still find a way to enjoy it when you kind of step back and say, well, this is just I'm just going to have fun with this. I know it's predetermined, but I'm going to have fun with this. And it's kind of that way with horror movies, right? Yeah, it's a fucking movie. No one's really dying. Let's just suspend disbelief for an hour and a half and just have a good time. So when you get a movie like this, it just like, fuck you. I'm going to rub it in your face. Like, this shit that you enjoy is fake.
That's what I was saying. When they do it right, when they do it well, it can be enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
I'm cool with it.
Yeah, okay.
But when they...
I guess there's just not as many good examples of it, right? Smoke, what do you think?
Yeah.
I think, I'm not a huge fan of it in general as a plot device, except, as we've all mentioned, Behind the Mask. That's, for me, that's the ultimate best example of a meta horror film that I like, that I enjoy. I can watch from beginning to end, and it also helps that it has a lot of good humor in it. Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot of these meta horrors horror movies do have humor, but they're kind of like thumbing your nose at horror fans kind of thing. Like, oh,
Now,
you like these movies and it's all stereotypical. That's going to happen. That's,
now
I would rather have that stereotypical slasher film that's not meta than the meta one.
Now, Behind the Mask is different, though, because it's more like, this is real. We're showing you, we are showing you how they make the cheese, right? That's what that movie is. It's almost like a behind-the-scenes look of, if serial killers were a real thing. Now, granted, it's done comically, right? But still, that's the premise. This is different. This is more like, we're gonna make fun of all the things that you might enjoy about slasher flicks, kind of thing. So like I think there's two different ways of approaching it here. Two completely different ways. So I guess really there's no true right or wrong answer to it. I guess it's more of like just what your taste is. I mean, everything's always subjective, and that's what we always say. But I thought it was worth mentioning that whole aspect of this, like. And I guess it really begs the question of whether they did a good job on it or not, and we'll get further into that. But speaking of things...
Also, though, one more thing about the meta thing, too, is it almost seems like a way to get people who don't watch horror movies regularly or normally to watch horror movies. Because, you have the meta aspect of it not being a real movie, that I've talked about this, that, making fun of it or whatever. And then, so it kind of seems to me a way to pull in people who aren't necessarily horror fans.
To me, it's like a let's laugh with them so they don't laugh at us approach. Like, well, they're gonna make fun of us, so fuck it, let's give them a reason. Let's make the joke. Let's laugh. Let's make the joke before they can. So, we beat you to it. But yeah, then there's just good and bad examples of that. But I'm not a huge fan of it myself. But there are times when Behind the Mask, and I like Behind the Mask, but I remember not liking it quite as much as you guys did. So. But I really enjoyed it. I mean, of these examples, like it's probably this and Scream. Any other ones I've watched, I really don't like too much. At least not as much as those, right? Varying degrees. But what
I've kind of steered them. If I hear about it being a meta horror, except for the movies.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. But one thing I did like though was the intros and the credits and everything. Like. Now, I know it's the joke, like, well, those credits were pretty good, but I thought they did a pretty good job in this one, like, of the, putting it up, like, the kill count throughout the movie, that little bit at the very beginning, the beginning credits look like, something from the 80s where it's like, you might be the killer, copyright, blah, 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 down on the bottom, like, I think some of those graphic choices were pretty good.
Yeah, it gives you that old school feel that they were going for, I guess, as far as, because, they had the film grain when the title cards would pop up.
Yeah, I thought they did pretty good with that. I mean, if you're just trying to find something positive here, right? I'm just trying to start there. We mentioned it, the Rings of Saturn, the comic book shop. I've been to a lot of comic book shops in my day, a lot. This has got to be, and Will, you've been in, I know Smoke, you've been in a lot too, but Will, I know you have been as well. This has got to be the world's busiest comic book store, right?
Oh, God, without question. Especially in the middle of the night, too.
Yeah, because doesn't she run out somebody? There's still somebody in there. She's like, it's after midnight. What the hell are you doing here? Like, what comic book shop is open after midnight? Or even up to midnight?
Yeah. Also, wasn't there a video store, too? Was it kind of like a comic book store / video store?
Yeah, I think it was one of those just, here's a pop culture, like, here's a little bit of everything kind of store, which I guess is in reality, because remember the actual name of the store in real life was and books too, and books too. Mm-hmm. So I'm assuming it's just one of those catch-all kind of pop culture type shops, but still that bad boy was bumping at all times. Every time it would cut to Chuck and she's walking around like stalking and checking people out and doing whatever the hell she's doing. There's like 50 people milling about this store. I'm like, yeah, no. Now, if you've ever been into a comic book shop, there's maybe like 5 people max at any given time, unless you're in fucking New York or something.
Also, though, I'm wondering if that sign, I don't know if y'all noticed a sign outside the shop, if it was part of the new version of the Rings of Saturn, or was it part of the original comic book sign? It said, I like big books and I cannot lie.
Yeah. I saw that, yeah.
But Sir Mix-a-Lot reference.
Yeah.
That seems cheesy enough to where that might be real.
I'll be honest, man. I got bored watching this fucking movie. I stopped watching I still let it play, but I was cleaning my frickin' stovetop. I decided to find something else more.
that's when you know the fucking movie is done. It sucks. Not gonna once you just like totally disengage from it and just let it play in the background and go clean or
just like
do something else.
I just started cleaning the frickin' kitchen, cleaning the damn stove. I'm just like, fuck it. But, I guess right around the, 45, 48 minute mark, I started watching again. Something, happened finally that kind of grabbed my attention.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote that I did, one part I did like about it, although, take away the meta part. I did like the storytelling device of it's kind of like a slasher in reverse. Because I don't, Smoke, you probably know more, and as we go throughout the summer, we might see some different examples of these summer camp slasher type flicks. But was there one that was kind of like, you have to kind of rewind, like, picking up the pieces, like, all right, this has already happened, now let's go back and figure this out, kind of thing. Do you remember anything like this as far as?
No, I don't remember that plot, and that it kind of strikes me as a, like post Pulp Fiction, pre Pulp Fiction, post Pulp Fiction. Because they play with the timeline, and a lot of movies started doing that. I don't remember any slasher movie before that messed with the timeline like that. Taking it from the end and going backwards or what. I mean, there could very well be one, but I don't recall one.
I'm completely blank on the name of that one movie that plays out like that. Memento, yeah, that's the one I was thinking of. But granted, this isn't as clever or even the same, really. But you get what I'm saying. It's right. This has happened. Now let's figure out how we got here, kind of thing. So I'm not saying it was the best example of this I've ever seen, but I thought they did a pretty decent job of it. And it's not something you see very much in horror.
I'll tell you the best example I've seen of that. It is horror in a way. It's more than horror. It's really a fucked up movie, is what it is. But Irreversible. I don't know if you ever heard of that.
I haven't.
It's a French director. He's made quite a few cult films and independent films and whatnot. But it does that, and it's horror in a way, but it's really more. It's more than that. It's got some violent and messed up scenes and whatnot, but it plays exactly in reverse. I mean, everything works from the end to the beginning, and it's the way it plays out when you finally get there. You're like, damn, that kind of blows you away. The way it's designed and set up. That's the one I can think of that does that the best for me, as far as that would be considered somewhat horror.
So for me, you've got the storytelling device was different. This reverse thing, so that's a plus, and you've got the credits. So that's the positives for me. So I guess we can pretty much wrap up the discussion with what about the ending? Like, what exactly, Will? What were your thoughts on the ending? The whole thing with the 2 years later, all that. Like, what do you make of it? What do you think?
I mean, they telegraphed it the whole way through the movie. So again, kind of going back to what we talked about earlier. I mean, there was no surprise to it. It's if you bring something up in a movie, more than likely it's going to come back. It's going to pop back up later on. They talked about the lightning striking and bringing them back from the dead. They talked about a final girl that was going to, save the day. I mean, I don't know. To me, like this movie just heavy-handedly told you what we're going to do and then did it. It didn't feel clever at all.
What do either, any of y'all make of that 2 years later thing? Like, Chuck's at the store working, she gets a phone call, and it's Sam. Wasn't that his name? Yeah. Who cares?
That's true.
Sam calls like, Chuck, it's me, and then she's like, oh, the end. It's you. I know it.
Oh, okay.
Whatever she said.
Yeah.
Well, there again, I mean, it just feels like, huh? Were you listening earlier? There it is.
Yeah, but like by the end, though, he wasn't. I mean, yes, he was the killer, but he wasn't the killer at the end, right?
Yeah, that's the part too. Yeah, because didn't she take the mask, put it on, then she became the killer?
Yeah, and then she took the mask off. Like, I don't know what the fuck. Like, she puts it on, kills him, then I guess she takes the mask and walks away. It just shows her like walking by the lake, on the way out.
You have no idea what happened to her. Did she get killed, or did she just go on to slash and kill a bunch of other people? Meanwhile, he comes back to life. Why is he now a killer again? He doesn't have the mask, so
that's what I'm saying. Like, what's the magic? what's the magic here? Did no one ever go back to that camp and find all these bodies, and his body just happened to be by the magical grave or something, and he comes back 2 years later because he didn't have the mask? It didn't make sense.
Because the lightning struck the ground where his body was or something like that. I mean,
maybe.
That's what I was saying. They mentioned that
Jason lives.
Yeah.
But I mean, they mentioned that like halfway through the movie of there's only like a couple ways out of this, and
yeah, I get it.
To me, it very much felt like, hey, we mentioned this earlier, so we gotta do it right here at the end.
Look, and you're probably right. Maybe they just didn't have a good way to finish this thing. So we've made the reference before. It's a bad SNL skit. We're like, well, fuck, we don't know how to get out of this. He calls 2 years later.
If they wanted that to make sense, then they would have had her not be they would have just had the final girl be killed.
Yeah, she kills him. She kills him, and then he's still wearing the mask. Then she walks away to be saved. That would have made more sense. That would have been more tropey, right? then 2 years later, oh shit, he's back. Okay, ha ha ha. Yeah. But the way they did it, it was just weird because, like I said, he wasn't the killer at the moment. Whatever. I mean, we're probably discussing this longer than they did when they wrote the movie. So
way too much into it.
Yeah. Again, this movie was hashed out over Twitter.
Yeah.
Oh, and another thing too, I saw it was also the script was written in 3 weeks, so it's probably shot in, I don't know.
I guess we're really answering a lot of our own questions by saying things like that. The concept was on Twitter, and they wrote it in roughly 3 weeks. So, and they shot it in May, and it was out by September. So, I guess all of these things go into this toxic stew of whatever it turned into here. So, all right, yeah, I guess that's it. So, Will, you brought this to the table, so let's do your star rating first. What do you think?
I'm sorry. No, I didn't like that. Again, it telegraphed every move that was going to be in the movie. I think they gave away way too much, way too early. I think it would have been something to at least show like all the camp goers that were supposed to be coming to this thing show up and find a bunch of dead bodies, and be like, have like a big scream fest right there at the very end. So yeah, kind of going back through, I hate that it telegraphs so much, but there were a couple of nice things about this movie, not to completely crap on it. I like some of the kills on there, like when the dude turns around and gets split in half, like that was like one of the kills where it's just like, oh
yeah,
all right, you got my attention again. There was a couple of good things. There was a couple of laughs, that kind of surprised you. But overall, I really didn't love this movie, and I kind of stumbled across it, trying to figure out like a new campy movie to watch. I think with this one, I think my score is probably going to be a 1.75 stars.
All right, Donnie, what do you say?
Will has a good point about the kills. Some of the gore probably ups it for me. But one thing I absolutely cannot get over is that I got bored as fuck watching this movie. And I got up to do other things.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm being generous here. I'm going to give it a full star, and that's it.
That's generous. Professor, what do you say then?
Well, as we've discussed before on this show, and just to kind of reiterate what Will and Donnie were saying, if you have a movie I don't know if they knew this movie was going to be shit, but if you know you have a movie that's not playing out all that well, what is the one thing you can do to juice it up a little bit? Add gore scenes in there. Make sure you got decent gore. And so, yes, thankfully they did do that for a decent amount of the kills. Like that head splitting scene that Will mentioned was awesome. There was some other, throat slashings and that gnarly machete / bone, whatever animal teeth thing. It looked like some sort of,
crocodile
little weapon thing from like some kind of jaw that they put on one side of it, the machete, and then the other side of the jaw on the other side. So it was like,
yeah.
And there was a couple of gnarly little kills with that too. So yeah, that is probably the most redeeming thing I can think of this movie. And as you mentioned, I like the little throwbacks to the, with the little title screens that had the like film, fake film grain or whatever. That kind of gave you that 80s, late 70s feel to those slides. Of course, the little horror nods here and there with the naming and all that, but that's not enough to bump it up any stars. The gore is enough to bump it up a little bit for me. So I'll probably split in between what Donnie and Will said, and I'll go with I'll go 1.5. And that half, well, really, I'll give the half a star for, it wasn't the worst we've seen.
No.
Definitely not the worst we've seen on the show yet. And, it's just really derivative and all that stuff. But a half for the storyline and all that. And then for the title screens, another little half maybe. And then, the rest is the gore.
I'm going to go, and it's going to be it's going to be a little higher than y'all's. And I'm going to go with a flat 2. I mean, that's only, a quarter of a star higher than Will's, but basically for all the same reasons that I said, I thought the look of it was pretty good. It was well shot and well done and everything, as far as the gore, the look of it and everything. I think they got all that right. And I thought it was, they were probably being a little too clever and a little too heavy-handed, but I thought the reverse storytelling thing was unique enough. So I'll give it a bonus, quarter of a star there myself. So, and like you said, Smoke, we've seen far worse. And, I don't know, there will be more, but I mean, I'm not going to base every rating on I know there's worse, but I think there were enough redeeming qualities here for me to say, I enjoyed it enough. Would I go out of my way to see it again? No, probably not. Unless there's some reason for us to watch it here for the show. This was probably the first and last time I'll ever watch this movie, more than likely. And I feel pretty safe in assuming that's probably the same for all of y'all, right?
Yeah, I will never see this pile of shit again. No, it wasn't a pile of shit.
No, it could have been it could have been better.
Yeah, I didn't hate it, but I also it did not capture my attention. I can't forgive that.
Mid, like we've said before, it's like the kids say these days, it's mid. And to that, I will add before we get into the gore score and whatnot. On IMDb, it's got 5.9 out of 10 stars, which that's probably being a little bit more generous than I would have thought.
Yeah.
But
no, when I was trying to find a movie to watch, a lot of people love this movie.
Yeah,
a lot of people. This was actually I
really
found a video talking about camp movies. This was their number one camp movie.
Isn't this just last summer, almost a year to the day, damn near it, when we saw the Summer of the Wolf, when you brought, I'm blanking on the name of the movie with the girls that turn into werewolves. What was the name of it?
Ginger Snaps?
Ginger Snaps. It's kind of the same premise here, right? People were just holy shit, this thing's awesome. One of the best werewolf movies you've ever seen. And then we were all like, meh. So it almost feels like that again. Here we go.
So it's my fault, is what you're saying.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. But like I said, IMDb gave it 5.9. 5.9 out of 10 stars. Rotten Tomatoes on the tomato meter, 60%. Which, as you know, we we try to always point these things out. That's pretty high for this type of fare. And the audience score was lower, but still only 47%. So there you go. Your normal critic aggregates were kind of favorable to it, especially to what we just said about it. So, all right, so there's our star ratings, and that you got our thoughts and everything, so you know how we feel about it, and all the tomato meter and whatnot. But before we close up shop, I'm going to toss to you, Donnie.
Connections from the crypt.
That gets me every time, I know. So I'm not the only one who doesn't want anything to do with this fucking movie. There are no connections at all to any past Spook Show episodes. I've got nothing for this one.
That's surprising. There wouldn't be somebody. I mean, I know Smoke. I don't think we've done anything that would have Keith David in it, right? He'd probably be the one, or Allison Hannigan. So
yeah,
just as far as on camera.
We don't have anything from Keith David yet.
Well, that will change. That will change, but we just haven't got there yet.
Yeah. So
wow, that's interesting.
Unfortunately, we will have to reference this movie again whenever we do more roles with, more movies with Keith David.
I'm sure, and others, but it's just as interesting to me that you find none than when you come and say, "Oh, I've found 42 connections." So that's honestly harder to pull, that there are no connections. So
yeah. All
right, so Smoke, we'll go ahead and toss it to you for the gore score.
Gore score.
Yeah, it's like I said, at least this one, what it lacks in the script development and all that stuff, it makes up a little bit in the gore department. It doesn't go all out, get too crazy, but it did have some cool kills, as we mentioned, the head splitting. typical like throat slashing that you see in the slasher movies. Although I'm not 100% sure if that wasn't CGI or not. The throat slash that you know. Then there was a beheading, multiple stabbings with a gnarly machete / saw tooth, you know, animal tooth thing or whatever. I guess I'd give it. I was kind of trying to go back and forth between whether I was going to give it a 6 or a 7. I think a 7 might be too high for it. I mean, it did have some good gnarly kills in it, but it wasn't prolonged. A lot of them also were off screen. There was a few of them that were like, well, not necessarily off screen, but he killed him or whatever, and then you see the body on the floor with blood on it. So there was a few of those that were kind of lost moments. Now I don't know if it's because they just didn't want to make this a splatter movie per se, or because they didn't have the budget to put all, you know, just keep adding that much gore effects or whatever. So I think I'll go with the 6 on this one.
There was enough gore there to satisfy your want for that in this movie, but it wasn't a lot, you know, so it met a good middle ground there, I think, for this type of movie. So yeah. By the way, I'll mention before I announce what my pick is for, you know, in 2 weeks, the total consensus score of after our ratings was 1.56, so 1.5 stars. It was our consensus at the end of the rainbow. So
yeah, that'll probably go down at the anniversary episode.
It might just go down. That wouldn't shock me at all. So, but we'll find out, you know, on our 4th anniversary show in October. All right, so next week we return with episode 112. It's hard to believe we're already, like, it just seemed like episode 100 was like 2 weeks ago. But we're already at episode 112. It's our latest Cult Corner, and we did the old spin the wheel, make the deal over on Deadline Horror News back at the end of May, and that decided this one. And it was my choice, ironically, since I'm about to make my choice for the next one, episode 113. But mine won the wheel spin, and it was Meatballs from 1979, the original Bill Murray comedy cult classic. So I'm looking forward to that next week. That's going to be a good one. Yeah. But the next episode, in 2 weeks, episode 113, it's my decision, and on the turn of the rotation, it's an older movie. So I don't know, Smoke. I kind of put out some clues. I don't know if you ever caught on to any of those clues as to what I was going to.
I've got 3 that I think it might be.
Okay. Well, go ahead and say what.
Well, before you do that, though, what were the? Do you remember what were those three hints again?
No,
because I know
it was really just one hint.
Yeah. Well, I've give a couple of hints over like Deadline Horror News and a couple of places. So I don't know if I don't know if anybody was putting the hints together, but
I was not, and I was there.
Yeah. Well, you're not paid. You're not paid to listen. You're just paid to be pretty.
It's not good.
Yeah. Donnie, go ahead and what are your 3 guesses? What do you think?
Okay, so I think we've covered Sleepaway Camp in the Spook Show archives. Mm-hmm. I think with it being an older movie, I think it's either Sleepaway Camp 2, The Burning, or it's Madman. So those are my 3 guesses. And I don't think that I think we had discussed this offline, but you gave us a hint prior to the show, saying it was basically the only hint you gave us. It was it's on Tubi. Yeah.
that was one of the random hints. Yeah. Yeah. So and at some point, Smoke, I said it's one of the big ones. So.
Okay. Well. Oh, you said it's one of the big ones?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to go, I'll guess, kind of like Donnie, I guess I'll guess 3. Maybe I'll just guess 2.
Okay.
So I'm going to go like Donnie, though, and Donnie put this in there first. I would say Madman would be one of my guesses. And the reason that is the case is because we talked about Madman before a few times as far as like the round, at the beginning of Madman, they have this thing where they're talking about the killer and what he did when, camp and whatnot. Mm-hmm. Another one, though, because we're talking about big and camp movies, Friday the 13th Part 2, because we haven't done that one, right? We've only done the first Friday the 13th?
Just the first one, yeah. I will say that, Smoke, you were damn close. And I almost picked Friday the 13th Part 2, but Donnie, you said it. I select The Burning from 1981.
What do I win?
Yeah. Well, you get to watch the movie with us. That's it.
Oh, hey.
So yeah,
yeah.
In 2 weeks, The Burning, 1981. So I'll go ahead and read the synopsis. A former summer camp caretaker, horribly burned from a prank gone wrong, lurks around an upstate New York summer camp, bent on killing the teenagers responsible for his disfigurement. So there we go.
That'll be fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, I'm going for one of the bigger ones. So we gotta hopefully we gotta make ourselves look a little better and feel a little better after You Might Be the Killer. So in 2 weeks, in 2 weeks we're going to watch The Burning. So yeah, there you go.
Who hasn't seen The Burning yet?
I'm sure, Will, you haven't seen The Burning, right? I
don't think so.
Donnie?
Yeah, I've seen it.
Okay, so
it's been a long time.
So I guess all of us have seen it, other than Will. So, but that's not unusual. That's almost par for the course, really.
Yeah.
Great, I'm the asshole.
I'll also say that I'm glad you picked this movie. I'm glad this movie's getting in there, because if you didn't pick it, I was going to probably pick it.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
I kind of thought that too. I'm like, you know what? If I don't just go ahead and pick this thing, Smoke probably will, next month. So, let's go ahead and get to it.
I have a few more behind. This was an important one. If nobody else picked it, I was going to pick it. But since you did, that's cool, because that frees me up to pick some of the other important.
Pick something else, yeah. So, there we go. The Burning, that'll be in 2 weeks. But like I said, remember, next week will be Meatballs, our latest Cult Corner episode. So, I guess that's it, guys. So for Will and Donnie, the Professor Smoke, I'm Josh. We are the All-American Spook Show podcast, and we will talk to you next week for another installment of Camp Spook Show.
It's now 9:30, and that's lights out time. 9:30, as you know. Tomorrow is Parents' Day, and you must look rested or Morty will be sent to the state penitentiary.